I want to talk about what I think is maybe my biggest concern with this basketball team right now and the program in general. Greg Gard. I just want to talk about it a little bit and get some of your comments in here. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Badger fans? This is just going to be kind of a quick one, probably. I didn't even update the graphic for a show that's coming up, but I want to just talk about a little bit. I think one of my biggest concerns, and it is 1:32 Eastern here, so welcome to Locked On Badgers Way After Dark. If you're joining us, whatever it is, I just can't sleep. So I've just been thinking about this team, and I've been doing work, and I'm like, I'm just going to jump on because one thing that's really frustrated me, and I've talked around it, but I don't think I've really talked to it. And I think it's one of my biggest concerns with Greg Gard is this is a really veteran team, right? It's a really veteran team that is falling apart. And that's a real problem when you unpack it, because you now have this group of players, Crowell, Wall, Hepburn, these guys that have been recruited, developed over multiple years in a system that Greg Gard prefers, and it's still not working. And that's not very often you get a core like this that has played this much basketball, right? And what you should be able to do with a veteran team is avoid long slumps. What you should be able to do with a veteran team is not lose 7-9. It's honestly one of my biggest concerns with this group, with this team, with Greg Gard at this point, is if you can't win consistently with a really veteran team that you've had together and you've developed for 3-4 years with the opportunity to augment it, when are you going to really take that next step? That's a big concern, man, wherever you are. And listen, I'm sitting here, I got my Gus Bus sweater on, right? Like I'm not again, I'm not on that bandwagon where I think Gard needs to be fired right now, but how often are you going to be able to say this is a team that I've put together and I've had these guys for 3-4 years and they've all been in my system. I've developed them all and it's still not working? I don't know, man. It's easy to point to a lack of success if you had a lot of departures, you lost a lot of your team. This team has stayed together and it should be at kind of the peak. This should be kind of the peak of this unit. And the fact that it's falling apart down the stretch, I think is super worrisome. We got a couple comments here, man. If anybody's here at 1:34 Eastern. God bless y'all. Ben Albin says, blah. He says, I'm on that bandwagon. Rick Mueller says, it looks like he's lost his team. Michael Wagner says, Gard's comments said it all. He threw every player under the bus. I actually didn't fully see his comments, so I'll have to go look at that. Michael Wagner says it's also never his fault. I do think there's times a little accountability could be pointed inward there. I agree with that. I want to take a couple of these comments I had pulled aside from our previous show too. This is from the YouTube show today, again, talking about the Illinois game. This is what from Drink with the Dead. He says, Ryan says these kind of games can't happen, but then is never willing to hold Gard accountable. This is the same conversation that these guys have been having for over a year. It's tired and old. I want to just start with, man, at the end of the day, nothing makes me happier than good Badgers basketball and football. Like I am a fan. And at the end of the day, we're all on the same team on this. We all want the same thing, right? We all want a good Badgers basketball team. We all want a good Badgers football team. Like that's what we all want. So, I mean, I feel like I hold Gard accountable on a lot of things, but I just want to be careful where as a fan base, we don't get to the point where we're screaming at each other because the success that we both want isn't being achieved. I think that narrative is really tough, and it just frankly to me, it gets old. Like we all want the same thing. I don't know if Gard's the guy, and honestly, I'm getting super frustrated with some of it. As I said to lead up the show, the fact that this is a really veteran team that he has had and developed for multiple years and is falling apart down the stretch to me is incredibly worrisome. Like that's a bad sign. You're just being real. Like, and I've been a guy who Gard has done some really good things. Like it's not, to me, it's not black and white. To some people, it has gotten black and white. It's not black and white to me, but I don't know. I just hope we don't get into a fan base where it feels like half the fan base is hoping we lose games so the coach gets fired, and the other half of the fan base, it gets really toxic, man. That narrative gets really toxic, and I hope we don't fully get there. Although I understand, but that being said, I totally get the frustration. I totally get. I don't. tell anybody their perspective's wrong, and I hope we never get to that point. Um, Liam G says 100% you have to make the adjustment when a guy has it going. The fact that Gard just let him go one-on-one essentially every position down the stretch is totally inexcusable. Yeah, I mean, I think I was talking about this too on another show, and Gard isn't a big adjustment guy. Sometimes that's a good thing. Like sometimes there's coaches who don't adjust because they believe in their scheme and their players. And by the way, there's coaches who adjust too much. There's coaches that as soon as something goes wrong, they throw everything out the window and players get confused. And then you just get chaos and chaotic stuff. Like you do want a coach who is steadfast in what he believes. I just think, again, this is something where Gard needs to be a little more flexible. And I 100% agree with you, Liam. Like he has to be more flexible. And he has not shown a willingness to do that. It's frustrating. Let's get some comments here, man, as well, because it is late and I just can't sleep. Alien Space says not getting a second transfer was an issue. 100%. Dude, you're nailing this. Like, the team is not deep enough. I've said it the entire year. This team is not as deep as people think it is. And everyone kept telling me, right? Yeah, there's a lot. I'm like, no, this team is not deep enough. And I don't want to be right on that because, again, that means the Badgers struggle. But they needed a big. They needed another guy in the front court. And they weren't able to get it. They got to get it this offseason. Like, it's not deep enough. Alien Space says depth has been Gard's biggest problem. Zach Bart says Gard is the worst coach, but he won't take us where we need to go. We know what we're getting with Gard and getting to the Sweet 16, isn't it? Every year we get the same results under him. Yeah, and first of all, Zach, thank you, man. Like you have great content as always, great comments as always. I do wonder if we are starting to get to the point where we know what we're getting with Gard. I know. Listen, to be fair, the season's not over either, right? I've talked about that. People have said there's nothing we can do going forward. Like this season's not over. Like it is fair to see. Let's see what happens towards the end of the season. But listen, this is trending in a certain way, and it's not a good one. So, yeah, you might not be wrong, Zach. Jackson Johnson says, "What's up, Badger Nation? What's up, JJ?" Jackson says, I hope Wisconsin can still make it to the NCAA tournament. They're basically a lock for the tournament because of what they did in the early season. And, that work counts. And so they're going to get there. Once you get there, anything can happen. But the way this team is playing, like, I don't know how you can be confident going into the season, going into March. Like, there's a very good chance if they continue to play like this, they're going to get bounced. The defense hasn't been able to get stops. The offense has been inconsistent. The depth hasn't been there. Yeah, it's frustrating. Michael Wagner says Ryan is on the fire bandwagon, boys. No, I'm not on the bandwagon. I'm not. But I'm super frustrated, right? I can't sleep. I'm frustrated. I'm not on the Gard bandwagon. I'm not. But I do think there's real frustrations here, and I am very. I'm very frustrated that this is a veteran team. Like, if you can't succeed with a group of guys that you've recruited and developed and kept together in the NIL transfer era for the course of 3 or 4 years, then I don't know when you are going to succeed. And I think that's kind of what's been rattling around my head. Like, this is kind of set up. Gard has had his starting power forward, his starting center, his starting point guard for multiple years at this point. That's not gonna be very common going forward in the NIL era of college basketball. Those are the teams that should outperform their talent level. Those are the teams that should look more cohesive. Those are the teams that should win in the clutch because they've been playing together for so long, because they've been in college for so long, because they've been in the same system for so long. Those are the teams that should be winning these games, not faltering. That's what's confusing and frustrating to me. Yeah, that's what's frustrating to me. Let's see. Hunter says, I don't understand what's happened to this team. We can point to a few things, right? We can point to the offense was at an incredibly high rate early in the year. That rate has cooled off, and the defense has also gotten worse. So if the offense had stayed at the levels it could have carried it through some of these defensive issues. It hasn't, and it is frankly unrealistic to expect the offense to stay that good. And then those early season defensive issues we talked about that Justin talked about and pointed to. And, we talked about, hey, this is a potential bad sign. Now those defensive issues with our offense coming down a level, those defensive issues have cost us games. So I think it's the offense coming back to the norm a little bit, Hunter. And then it's the defense that just has never been able to pick it back up for whatever reason. I think there's a lot of inconsistency in the rotation, like players that you have a hard time knowing what you're going to get from game to game. I think that is something that has happened to this team a little bit. But yeah, it shouldn't be to this level. Tom Nesis points to recruiting misses, a little quality of depth. Yeah, there's a couple comments here I want to get to. Will Hanna made a comment because one of the things I talked about in today's game against Illinois, and again, I apologize, man, for this late show. If you're here, you guys are amazing. You guys and girls are amazing. Thank you for joining me. Like, this is just like me not being able to sleep and having things in my head. One of the things we talked about in the Illinois game was the effort. I thought the Badgers played pretty hard. Will Hanna pointed out effort should be expected 100%. But let me tell you, and again, this is where there's gray area. Everybody wants me to just say fire Gard or don't fire Gard. You're not going to get that from me because I think there's gray area to some of this. I really do. And people don't want to hear that. But there's a lot of teams, if you lose 7 of 9 games, effort won't be there. Like that team will implode. They'll get blown off the court. Like that wasn't this team. Like Greg Gard has had that team playing. They played hard today, right? They haven't thrown in the towel. That is a bit of a credit to Greg Gard, right? So yes, effort should be expected, Will, but a lot of teams who are spiraling a little bit at the end of the year, you wouldn't get effort. And I think that is something you can point to and say, I don't know if Gard has lost the locker room, but they're playing hard. They played hard today. I really do believe they played hard today. This is one from Will Hanna. I thought this is an interesting question. How many really good players are on this team? He said to me, to be considered a really good player, you have to consistently be good on a game-to-game basis. So I was going through my head, like, to me, and feel free, again, we're all Badger fans, like, feel free to disagree. All disagreements, all perspectives on this show, on this channel, on this community are always welcome as long as it's respectful, right? To me, the good players on this team, Chucky Hepburn's a good player. Steven Crowell's a good player. I will die on that hill. I know some people get frustrated with them. Steven Crowell's a good player. Tyler Wall's a good player. Max Klesman's a good player. I think John Blackwell is already a good player. I think he's incredibly impressive as a freshman. So that's 5. AJ Storr, sorry. AJ Storr is a good player too. I know shot selection at times frustrates people, but I think those 6 are good players. I think more of the problem is, and I talked about this in the Illinois show, is we have a collection of good players, but Illinois has 2 great players. And right now, we just don't have a guy who consistently game to game is great. A guy that we can throw the ball to, a Johnny Davis type, and say, go get a bucket. And I think that's the difference. So I think we have 6 good players on this team. And I think in the future, you can point to some younger players that are potentially going to join that group. But I don't think we have a great player. And I think that's an issue when you're playing teams that do have a great player, right? College basketball, or not college basketball in general. Like, the team with 4 quarters don't equal $1 in basketball, if you know what I mean. I mean, 4 good players don't equal 1 great player. 1 great player is worth more than a collection of good players typically. So I think this team lacks a high-end talent, and that's a recruiting thing, a developmental thing. I did want to hit this. GT Miller said, God bless Howard Moore and the family. 100%. Yes. 100%. That is without doubt. Eric Carlson, curious in the chat, where do you guys at in this? How many new players do the Badgers need this offseason, do you think? And again, I don't want to get apocalyptic with this. This season's not over. Like, there's a couple games left in the regular season. Weird things happen in sports. There is talent on this team. I think this team can get hot shooting. Again, I don't think Greg Gard should be fired right now. I'm not there. But I am curious, how many new players do you think they need this offseason? They're bringing in Robeson. They're bringing in Freitag. That's 2. To me, and Rajiv has disagreed with this, I think they need another guard. I absolutely think they need another veteran guard because I still think they're thin there. So to me, that's 3. And I think they need to replace Wall. That's 4. And I think they need someone else in the front court. So 5. I think they need 5 players. That's with the 2 freshmen coming in. And I think they need another guard or wing. It could be a wing or a guard, and 4 to replace Wall, and another guy in the front court to give Crowell some help against more athletic players. Is that going to be super hard? Yeah, that's going to be really challenging to do. But I mean, that's what the job entails, right? being a coach at a Division I program is challenging. It's supposed to be challenging. And I think if you really want to go into next year feeling good, you need 5 players. If you skimp on any of those, it's the other guard. I think you need a couple pieces in the front court. Unless and listen, I'm wearing my Gus Bus sweater. Unless internally you're super confident in Nolan Winter taking a jump, Gus Yalden taking a jump. If you're internally within the program, you're seeing practice every day, and you're saying, listen, those guys are going to be good next year. They're just not there this year. Okay, I can't speak to that. I'm not in practice. I'm not going to pretend to know. I will say the returns on Nolan Winter this year haven't been quite as strong as I had hoped. All right, we got a bunch of comments here, and I want to hit these because honestly, this is just event session, man. Let's put our thoughts together and figure this thing out. Cold Stone says, and Cold Stone's awesome. Gard is responsible to find in-state guys like Domas that went under the radar and went to mid-majors. He's got to see these guys and develop them in-house. The in-state recruiting has been bad. So that is an incredibly fair perspective. I'll just tell you mine, and I could be wrong on this. This isn't the right response, the wrong response. It's just mine. I don't really give a crap about in-state recruiting. That's just me. Like, again, I could be completely wrong on that. I just want talent, right? If wherever you get it from, I guess I don't really care. Like, if it's Domask in-state, that's great. And I guess you can make the argument that in-state recruiting should be a little easier. You should be able to land those guys. It should be more of a layup. And that's why you prioritize it. And there's a lot of good high school talent in Wisconsin. We've seen that talent, right? Go to other places and just flourish. But honestly, I don't really care. If you get a guy from Montana, if you get a guy from Uzbekistan, like, I guess I don't really care. But you got to find more talent, and that's the bottom line. But that's just where I'm at. Atheist 14 says no injury excuses, really? Yeah. I agree. Like, listen, the Badgers have started the same 5 in every single game this year, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure that's correct. So they've been remarkably healthy. I know people will point to, the Kamari McGee injury. That's not a good enough reason for losing 7-9. And that's no disrespect to Kamari McGee. But Kamari McGee brings stuff to this team. Like, you want to talk about guys that Gard has brought in that were pretty good additions. Kamari McGee's one of them. He didn't play as much last year, but you've seen the value this year. We talked when I had Gardner Fickle on about the defensive metrics when Kamari McGee is on the floor. He jumps the defense up a level when he plays. But there's teams that have lost way more than the Badgers have lost and not fallen off a cliff, right? They've started the same 5 every game. No injury excuses. And by the way, there's no injury excuses anyway. This is D1 basketball. That's why you recruit a bench. That's why you have multiple scholarships. That's why you got to be able to have 3 or 4 guys off the bench you can bring into a game. Like, what would happen to this team if Steven Crowell got hurt? And I know people get frustrated with them, but like, there's not enough depth in the front court right now. And that, I think that's very real. The Larson said Illinois is just better. I agree. I mean, they are. Eric Carlson says it'd help if the Badgers would look at the rim once in a while when they have the ball. Bro, Eric, you and me are simpatico right now. Especially like Steven Crowell, man. You're shooting 44% from 3. Look at the rim. That's a tough one for me. Man. Dylan Badgerme says, my concern with firing a coach is the same as Rajiv. It's not a foregone conclusion that it goes in the right direction. That's 100%. And Rajiv and I, we talked about that very point, Dylan Badgerme, after the show. And I think, listen, let's just be super fair with this. There are a lot of people who want Greg Gard fired. And that, again, that's a totally fair perspective. I'm not here to tell anybody how to fan. But there are a lot of people who want Greg Gard fired who are not even acknowledging the fact that you could end up making a worse hire and tailspinning the program. Nebraska at one point in time, and I know that's what everybody goes to, but there's a reason everybody goes to it. Nebraska moved on from Frank Solich, who was winning a ton of games, like a really good coach, and they spiraled their program, right? Because they chased the ceiling, and the floor wasn't important to them. Now, I would argue Frank Solich's floor has been higher than Greg Gard's floor. And I would also argue that Nebraska made pretty poor hirings, right? So that's part of it too. But Nebraska destroyed their program by chasing a higher ceiling. And it can go wrong. And people need to at least acknowledge that. That doesn't mean you change your opinion, but at least acknowledge the fact that there's a risk. There's always a risk to hiring somebody. So just be careful there. Alien Space says Gard should add a recruiter for DC, Maryland, Virginia. Yeah. He should add recruiters for a lot of spots. I'm down with it. Kyle says you just got to can him. Simple. And again, I think more and more people are coming to that area. I'm not there. I'm still not there because I still think this team is better than last year. He went and got AJ Storr. I think people said he's never going to be able to go in the portal get an athletic guy, and then he did. Right? He landed Daniel Freitag. I can't wait to see Freitag on campus. That dude's going to be a stud. Like that dude's going to be a straight up baller. I still think Yaldin can play next year. I'm not done with him. I haven't given up on that. Excuse me, on the Gus bus. But yeah, there's a lot of people that they're at where you're at, Kyle. And I'm not gonna be here and try to convince you otherwise. Like that's the one thing too. Like I don't want to be the defense attorney for Greg Gard, right? I feel like how I feel. I'm super frustrated with this stretch of basketball. I think Greg Gard's got to be better. All stop, no excuses. I think the recruiting needs to get better. The depth needs to get better. That's all on Greg Gard. Period. Stop. No excuses. But I think he hasn't made a step from last year to this year, and that's what I was asking for. I said, get better. They're better now. Next year, they got to be better again. But that's kind of where I'm at, and I totally respect where everyone else is at on this as well. Let's see. A couple more comments here. Let's get some season grades. This is a good one as always. Storr B+, Wall B, Klesman B, Blackwell B, Hepburn C+, Krause C, Winter D, Gilmore D-, Sejan F. I would probably be a tick lower on Storr, a tick higher on Wall, a tick higher on Blackwell, a tick higher on Crowell. I think the rest of them you're probably about right. Is where I'm at. Michael Wagner says we have good players, not great players. The inconsistency is obvious, and every player is obvious faults. Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I don't think there's a great player on this team right now. I think there's players who have great games, certainly, right? And there's players that are better than good players. There's some really good players. I think Tyler Wall, when he's on, is almost unguardable in the post at times. But I don't think there's not a guy on this team that is leaving for the lottery next year and is going to get picked. Yeah, I don't think I don't know. So I agree. I don't think there is a great player. I asked how many players we need next year. Alien Space say 2, maybe 3. Nick Flav says a center and power forward. Chiga Lonk says backup 5 and a starting 4 are the most important ones. Yeah, like gosh, that front court depth. Again, unless you really think, if you really think that Nolan Winter and Gus Yaldin are taking a big step up, and internally you know that, unless you really think that, then you got to go get multiple pieces. Sonny Verma, who does great Illinois content, said, I think you played us pretty well. There's just not many teams that can keep up with Illinois on offense right now. Yeah, and I talked about this with Rajiv on the reaction show, and Sonny does great stuff. I thought they played pretty hard today, and I give Greg Gard credit for that, but they don't have the horsepower right now. They don't have the horsepower. But I think if they played like this against Indiana, I think they would have won that game. And again, that's not an excuse. It's on this team to play this well each time, and they haven't consistently done it. And again, for everybody that is here at 1:55 Eastern for me in the morning, I appreciate the heck out of all y'all. Like, I'm just sitting here not really being able to sleep, man, and it is what it is. Nick Flav says, yeah, if you're blaming Kamari McGee for losing, there's a reason the head coach has to answer to the press. Yeah, you can't blame Kamari McGee for this. I don't want to hear that. And again, I haven't even really listened to Greg Gard's post comments, post game comments. I'll go check him out if that's what he's doing. Would be frustrating to me. You can't blame your seventh man for losing games. You can't blame your seventh man if you've lost 7 of 9. Like, A, nobody wants to hear that. And B, that speaks to a lack of accountability. Now, does it hurt? Yeah, absolutely it hurts. Every team has injuries, though. This is college sports, right? No, there's no sympathy. Goodness gracious. Justin says, I'm not overly critical of Gard, typically overly critical of Gard, but if we don't finish strong, flame out early in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA, he should be on the hot seat heading into next season. I think it's an incredibly fair way to look at it, Justin, and I'm right there with you. I think if this thing continues to spiral, we lose to Rutgers. I think there's no scenario we're beating Purdue, and then you don't show well in the Big Ten tournament or March. Boy, like that seat has to be hot. And I don't like talk. I'm not a guy who likes calling for jobs. I think that's one of my biggest things with this is I'm not a guy who likes calling for someone's job. But this is a results-driven business, right? You as a Division I coach, you make a ton of money, and Wisconsin has a ton of resources. It's as simple as that, right? And ultimately, it certainly isn't going to be my call anyway. It's going to be Chris McIntosh. But yeah, there aren't many excuses to lose 7-9. And let's say we beat Rutgers but lose to Purdue. It's going to be 3-10 and down the stretch. That's hard to justify unless you go on. Listen, unless you go on a great. I don't even want to say great, but unless you go win a couple games in March, you get to the Sweet 16. That's a different story. But it's gonna this season is going to hit like a thud if you don't finish strongly. You don't put a couple wins on the board. It's going to be really tough to go into next season with any type of optimism. Yeah, everyone here is a real fan of the show. This is the real ones right here. In fact, let's do this. Let's auction for the real ones right here. And I wasn't planning on doing this, but hold on. Let's do this. So I got this. This is part of the giveaway we did, but the guy never claimed it. So we got this awesome. It lights up. It's super cool. It's got a remote. You can dim it. Let's give this away today. So let's do this. Trivia question right here. First person in the comments wins it if you want it. Let's have something fun. Let's do something good. So this running back in a key game against Iowa, 4th and 2, replaced. There were 2 starting running backs injured in this game. Okay. This was the 3rd string running back, came in and on 4th and 2 caught a clutch pass for a first down on what would eventually be the game-winning drive against Iowa. Can you name this running back? Not Dare. Good guess. This running back came in after, not Taiwan Deal, Alien Space. Good guess. This running back came in after 2 starting running backs got hurt, caught a slant pass out of the slot, in a shotgun situation on 4th and 2. Not Garendo. Nope. Not James White. James White's a great guess. Think 3rd string running back that had to come in against Iowa and replace 2 starters relatively recently. Oh my gosh, my camera is going nuts, and I apologize. This one, we'll keep giving clues to him. This running back had the tagline, his last year in Madison, fall belongs. Yep, Autumn Supply Company, Monte Ball. Let's go. Hey, send me a DM, man. Send me your address, and I'll ship that out to you. So one of my STN40 says Alan Amici. No, not going that far back. So one of my favorite all-time Monte Ball moment, 4th and 2, that incredible Iowa game, right, where J.J. Watt and Monte Ball had that great last touchdown, right, where he reached the ball over. Shouldn't have reached it out. He could have fumbled it. But earlier in that drive, my all-time favorite Monte Ball moment, John Clay gets hurt. James White gets hurt. Monte Ball comes in, 4th and 2, and they run him out to the slot, and he runs a slant pattern, has to go down low to catch the ball. It was so incredible to see a guy who shouldn't have even been playing make a play in that moment with those hands, know exactly what he was doing, the clutchest catch ever. Yeah, absolutely love Monte Ball, man. That's my favorite play of him ever. So anyway, Autumn Supply Company, man, send me a DM on Twitter. I'll ship that out to you. I appreciate everybody who's here with us at 2 a.m. Eastern. And yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Like I said, I'm frustrated by it. I had a bunch of comments I wanted to get in. I think this team needs a bunch of players. Like I said, 5. That's probably, honestly, it's probably unrealistic. But I think you need 2 front court guys. I think Free Take's going to play. That's 3 right there. And if you could get another wing guy or a little more depth, because again, I don't think the wings are really deep on this team either, right? I think you have AJ Storr. Blackwell can kind of play in those spots, but they could use depth there as well. And honestly, this team needs a consistent shooter. Like if we want to be really real, if you could find a guy who, and it should have been Connor Seagen this year, right? That guy who can come off the bench and shoot 38% and just for 10 minutes, for 12 minutes, play passable defense. That's all you need, but hit shots at a high clip. Because who on this team, you swing the ball to the corner, right? Who on this team are you incredibly confident is going to bang that 3 right now? I'm actually pretty confident in Blackwell. I certainly don't hate Hepburn taking it. I don't hate Klesman taking it. There's not enough shooting on this team, though, because Wall's not going to take it, even though he banged one today. Crowell doesn't even look at the rim anymore. AJ Store's a little inconsistent. Like I said, I don't mind Hepburn taking it, but Hepburn's not shooting a great percentage. This team needs more shooting, right? So if you can find a shooter in the offseason in front court depth, pair that with free tag, I think you might have something coming. But Rick Mueller says that was a great question. Carson says great show as always. Kyle says great question. Yeah, I'll go pull up that clip and put it on Twitter. It is such a high IQ play because there's so many third string running backs. They're not in a position to even play, right? They haven't mentally prepared themselves. You run them out in the slot, they don't have the hands to do it, or they lock up because it was the clutchest moment of the game. Like that's the greatest Monte Ball highlight in my Wisconsin brain history. He absolutely crushed it. Michael Wagner says Esigian doesn't play, so I can't blame him. Listen, I've said multiple times, man, like I don't love how Gard handled the Esigian minutes, but he was terrible today. Like that's the problem. Like you can't play him if in 6 minutes he misses a shot, has 2 turnovers and 2 fouls. Now I think one of those turnovers actually was an offensive foul, so it's really 1 turnover and 2 fouls, however you want to slice it. But dude, you just gotta play better. And I think Gard didn't do him any favors early in the year. By the way, I think that back injury set him back too. But yeah, you can't play him at this point in a close Big Ten game that you got to win because he's not good right now. And players get in funks, right? You get out of rhythm. And that's true in life. Like in life, we get in funks. Like I've been in a funk before where I'm not performing at my best. And maybe it was my boss's fault. Maybe it was my fault. Yes, as usual, it's a combination of a lot of things. And I'm not performing to the best of my ability. And listen, my boss probably want to send me into a sales presentation at that point because he knows I'm in a slump. And I have to find a way to work my way out of that. So is that completely fair to Connor? No, but he was bad today. Like Connor wasn't good today. And I love Connor. I love what he did last year. He wasn't good today. And it's unfortunate, man. Oh, man. Kyle Matry says, this is my problem, man. I can't stop taking comments because you guys are amazing. And I could talk Badger stuff all day. I'll probably wrap it up here. Again, this is mostly just a basketball vent session. Just let's put it all out there, man. Let's be frustrated together. We're having virtual beers together right now. And yeah, I hear you, Mike. Man, his leash is so short. Impressive. His first shot doesn't go down, he's done. But I'll just say it like if that first shot goes down, you still can't make turnovers. You still got to stay in front of somebody. Like in that 6 minutes, he got blown by, fouled the guy at the rim because he couldn't guard him. He just wasn't good. And not all that's on him, but at the same token, in a tough game against Illinois, when you're fighting tooth and nail, you can't have a guy out there like that right now. Should Gard have done more early in the year to get him ready for these moments? Yeah, he should have, but he didn't. And now because he didn't, you can't play him. If he's going to play with that, you can't play him. And again, I'm a Connor fan. I think there's a ton of latent talent hidden in those biceps, right? Hidden in that shooting form. I think there's a lot there, but he didn't have it today. Yeah, and Carson said he fell off. Yeah, he didn't have it today. All right, we'll wrap it up there, y'all. Really do appreciate it. Michael says, stay up. This is fun. I would, but man, I got to get to sleep here. Carson does say season's not over yet. Still got Purdue Big Ten Tournament March Madness. Gard can still save this season. Yes, that is the comment I'm going to end on, Carson. Like this season is not over, and I will fan my heart out against Rutgers and Purdue. It's not over. Right, Gard has to do something to build some momentum going into next year. And by the way, that's not just for next year. That's so you can sell that to recruits. That's so you can go get some more guys. That's so you can go to the portal and not. You want to be able to sell something, man. You want to be able to sell a part of something exciting, and it's hard to do if you don't turn this thing around just a little bit. So, yeah. Oh, here we go. Fourth Empire says it was actually 4th and 4 and Monte caught the ball. Appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you for the correction. Yeah, I was close. 4th and 4, though. Either way, crazy clutch play. And again, I already forgot who won it. Supply. Send me, DM me, man. Autumn Supply Company. DM me. I will ship that out to you free. Everything. Michael says 24-hour stream. SDN40 says 24 hours of Locked On Badgers. Man, I would do it if I could. I would do it if I could. My adult job gets in the way. No, my adult job's great. I shouldn't say that. It's a great job. All right, on Wisconsin. I love the pop-up camper you have in your icon there, STN40. My parents used to have one, and we used to go camping in it. So that was a ton of fun as always. We're going to wrap it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Crazy late, but it was a ton of fun. Thank you for letting me vent a little bit. Hopefully we talked about this. If I could say one thing at the end, it's don't let this Gard thing become toxic among Badger fans if we can avoid it. Disagree with people. Maybe I'm being, I don't know, naive. Obviously, I'm being naive because it's the internet and people are going to get angry. But ultimately, we all want the same thing. All right, we all want better Badgers basketball. However we get there, man, I don't even care at this point. So, on Wisconsin, we'll talk later. Kyle says, thanks for the show, man. Kyle, thanks for showing up. Honestly, like, I'm humbled that anybody listens, and y'all are giving time. That's the most important thing we got. So, thank you, Kyle, for showing up, man. As always, appreciate you. On Wisconsin, and we will talk later.